Hello and welcome to Stationeers. I uh, I have been on Reddit and one of the Reddit users has asked me for help. Well, he's asked for help because he doesn't understand the logic very well. Now, I did point him in the direction of various tutorials, and unfortunately, he didn't seem to find them useful enough. So, I'm going to try and go right from the very basics through to basic programming to hopefully give anyone who is playing this game the best chance at learning how to do amazing things. So, what is logic? Logic itself is something that every device, most devices have within the game, and basically when you change something on the device, it'll change one of the logic settings. Now, on this switch, we have lock, open, a prefab hash. Everything has a prefab hash. All that means is the number that the game recognizes the entity with, and this one has open and setting. Now, open and setting, for all intents and purposes, on this one do the same thing. However, as you can see there, one's in green and one's in grey. Well, what's that about? If we go to the Stationpedia and look at switch, we can see that open is a read and write type of logic, and setting is a read-only type of logic. So what that means is you can have another logic device like a writer or an IC housing affect that open variable, but that won't work with the setting because it's a read-only. Now, what do you do with the logic? Well, every device that has a data logic port like this can be connected to every other data logic port. Now, when you're looking at, let me find my, there we go. When you're looking at a device, you'll see on the left-hand side of that there's an arrow pointing inwards with what looks like a computer network. And on the right-hand side, it's pointing out. At the top there, you've got the power. And power is power, and you can see in this example here, this is an RTG giving out unlimited power, turning on the lights. That power is going into this logic writer, this logic reader, and to this light, which I can turn on and off. Now, if I turn these on, they're going to flash an error at me. Whenever you see that orange blinking light on a device, on a logic device or any device that's got a logic input, you usually find that that's an error. Daylight is approaching. So what we need to do there is to set the devices. And with some devices, you need an input and an output. This logic reader has an input that side and an output that side. So when I go to change this pin, all I should find is, no matter how many times I press it, is the switch. The switch has data. It doesn't matter which side you use. They're both in and out. So, and then, okay, so my logic reader here, I've got the switch. What variable am I going to look at? Well, we've still the variables we can look at there in the Stationpedia. You have open, free patch hash, setting, lock. Now, in theory, open should work as well as setting for this example I'm going to show you. So if I turn that on, open equals 1. If I press that, open is 0. Press it again, open is 1. So that is basically taking the logic from that device, reading it, and reading a variable of it, and making that available to the next part of the network. So it's output there. This logic writer, its input can only be the logic reader. The output, though, could be, which is this top one here, it says out. Output here could be the flashing light, but it also goes to all the different wall lights there. So we want to stick to the flashing light for this, and the output variable, well, we can use on, lock, on, or basically they're the only two writable. If you look in the Stationpedia again, and we look at light, and we look at flashing light, as you'll see down here, the only two writes we have are lock and on, so the only two variables it'll give us the option for is locking on. In this case, we want on. So what we're doing now is the switch open. So we're loading from the switch into the registry that is this reader on 1 or 0 basically, and then we're going to use the logic rider here to take that and save that to the light. So that's that, and then if you press this, the light comes on. Press it again, the light goes off. That is very basic logic. Now that could be any trigger you want it to be. That could be a pipe analyzer, that could be anything. But as long as you can read a variable, you can then use that variable in the network. But there's going to be a little bit more to it than that, because these logic riders and most of the ons and off kind of states use Boolean logic, which is basically 1s and 0s. So you have to turn, if you, let's say, had a sensor here that was reading pressure and you wanted it to, or temperature, let's say, even better for a greenhouse, and above a certain temperature, you would then want to turn on a cooler or a wall heater or something. Then you need a little bit more involvement. Now I'm going to go and set that up off camera so you don't have to watch too much. And I'm also going to, I think it's probably a good time to show you the power, the sheer absolute wonderful power of the IC chip, because I was very, what's the word? I didn't like these things to start with. I struggled with logic for a little while. That is my fast airlock. Now ignore the whooshes. It's this isn't set up right now properly. So basically, you've got two options for writing an integrated circuit chip. Option number 1 is you get a computer, you stick in an IC editor motherboard, and you attach a housing. I will show you how to do that very quickly. You get these from the electronics printer, which I don't actually have set up right now. Or you can grab a laptop, pop in a battery, pop in an IC motherboard, and pop in a programmable chip. So I'm going to just grab a circuit. I'm going to probably spawn a few things in. But I just wanted to show you there that this can be absolutely amazing. Okay, just a quick segue here. To set up a computer, you will need a computer, IC motherboard, screwdriver, put it together, and then you can see you got the power and the data. You're going to want to hook them up. I'm cheating in here because I'm in a creative world, especially for testing and demonstration purposes. So with this one, I can put that there, let's say, and then attach a housing. Now, on the housing, you can see there's both a network and a power. Now, unlike the chips, you only have one input and output for data. It's an omnidirectional thing, and then the power is obviously the power. So in this network, we are basically using the same thing for both, the same cable. Now, not all networks are the same. It depends on how you set yours up, but for this one, we're just doing this. So then we hook that up to... Now, I'm going to use an area power controller. But the simple fact is it separates the networks, so anything that we do on this network will not be affected by this network. Now, I'm setting up a little bit of a example here. I'm going to try and integrate both the computer and the logic at the same time. Don't worry, don't panic. If you get one of them, you'll get both of them. This is how I learned anyway. As I said, I was absolutely ridiculously bad when it came to logic. The very first thing I tried to set up was solar tracking. I got very frustrated, went to the forum, and basically I was told that I didn't have all my inputs and outputs connected properly, and that was causing my problem. Once I solved that, I was away. And since then, I've just got better and better and better. So, you know, you can too. You can too. So once we've done that, powered it on, we get this only one IC housing, so that's the only one it's going to look at. Then you can pop in an integrated circuit. I don't even know what's in this one. It doesn't really matter. We'll come back to you in a moment. Excuse the very blatant interruption again. Now, I just realized I hadn't quite touched on laptops. You can't use a laptop in the hand. Unfortunately, I don't understand why. You have to throw it on the floor. Using Q or T, you can pop an integrated circuit right in. Now, something else I didn't explain very well, and if you don't know, you don't know. If you press export, it writes whatever's on that screen to the chip. So I spawned both of these chips in. They both had 0 bytes. That one now has 4,982. If I put that one in and I press import, it'll import whatever's there. Even if there's nothing on the chip, it'll import nothing. So now I've lost that code. So unless I happen to have it in my library, it's or another chip, it's gone. If I put this chip in now instead and import, there you can see that code is back again. So just be very careful. You can label the chips, you can color the chips with spray paint or whatever you feel like. Just be careful. The laptop can only read from the IC the laptop. You can't plug it into anything. It is what it is. And obviously you have to click edit to get into your main screen. Just thought I'd kind of clear that up in case you'd never used the interface of the laptop before and you were wondering, right, what am I doing over here? Gonna have to get rid of some of the clutter here, sorry. So, okay. I'm going to use this dial to simulate a sensor because we want to find a trigger point. And on a dial, you only get 1, 0, and 1 to start with. It doesn't go any higher until you increase this. So let's say it can go up to 21. That's fine. And smaller increments, you can press C to hold down. So we're going to say this is sensor. And as you can see there, I've put down sensor D0 because on here you have pins D0 through to D5. So I'm going to, as I say, kind of try and do both of these at the same time. So let's say we're looking for temperature. We're going to say that if the temperature gets above a certain level, we want to turn on a cooler over here, right? So we're going to have to do the same as before, but we're going to have to read from the device the variable that we're looking for. Now, the difference here is we can't just write 1 or 0 straight to the cooler, but this time we have to do something to find out whether, because it's not 1 or 0, we can't just turn the light on or off based on the switch. We're looking at the sensor. The sensor's going to change. So what we have to do this time is do a compare. So obviously you scroll mouse wheel to get the different variables. I'm sure most people know that by now. Here we've got the left and the right inputs, power at the top and an output at the bottom. So we put that in. Now you can do maths, you can compare, you can do various different things with the processor, including select. I'm not sure how that one works. You can do minimum, maximums. You can do, I don't know what a math unity is. I don't even know what a logic gate is, but maths and compare are what most people will actually need, at least to start with. So here we have memory, hash generator. Stick with the memory. This is the variable that we're wanting to trigger. So I'm going to say in this case it's going to be a 10. So you need the screwdriver. Press C, you'll get small increments here. Instead of going up 100, it'll go up 10. These ones will go up 0.0 if they're, and they go up 1 normally. So we have 10 in the memory, and we're going to be comparing the memory. The only thing we can compare is the memory to this side, which is the logic reader, the only thing we can compare. And we're going to say if it's greater than 10, then we're going to get an output of 1. This is all this does. It turns these numbers into a on or off, a Boolean logic. So we have to remember to set the reader. The reader is the dial or the sensor, and the variable is the setting, I believe. In this one, we can see that by looking at this. Setting 1, to put it that way, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. So this should now, if I turn this on, it'll say 8. There we go. If I move that again, 7, it now says 7. Okay. So you're comparing that to that. If it's not greater than that, then we don't get nothing. Let's turn it up. 11. Now you're giving a 1 because it is greater. That's exactly what we want. Now if I put it on 10 exactly, it should be 0 because it's not greater. So the logic writer is now taking in from the logic compare and writing out to the flashing light, and the variable is on. Okay, so now the magic happens that if the sensor goes above 11, the light comes on, and as soon as it goes down again, the light goes off. So that is as basic as you can make it. As I say, if you just literally replace that with a sensor, and then you can make that number, and you're comparing, I'll actually do it. There we go, gas sensor. And so this time we are looking for gas sensor, turn it off when you're fiddling with these things, and we're looking for the, went past it, press C and go back, temperature. Okay, so it's reading, and as you can see, that went straight up on because it's above 10. So we're looking at 291 and climbing, it looks like. So let's go turn you off. This is all in Kelvin, so 293. Turn that on. It's going to slowly get up to, I could actually put that down to 209. That's 290 point. So because the number coming in from the left is less than, is not less than the number on the right, that won't be on. But because we want it to come on if it's greater, we want to put greater. Now the light will come on. So because this number is greater than that number, we turn on the cooler. So why do I have sensor variable function S and cooler? Because in order to make all of this big circuit on the computer, what you do is you go to edit and you click on that, and it brings up this script here. So D0 is the pin we have the sensor on, and the cooler will be D1. So what we can do, so we remember that, we don't have to do this, we can alias the sensor to Z0, alias the cooler to D1. Now, most code that needs to be continuous and not just run the one time is going to have to loop. So you can call it something as a name tag. It can be loop, it can be start, it can be anything. I put something in just to demonstrate that the tags can be anything that you want. So something will do for this example. Now we want to load from a device, basically. Now if we go into here, this is the functions. The functions show you what you're capable, what the code is capable of doing. Now there's lots of things in here. Basically it says that register equals 1, so the register is the R's. Question mark, it can be any register you want, R1 to R10. Let me just turn the noise off for a second. Now A and B, so and A, B. So register equals 1 if A, this register, and B, this register, are not 0. If one of them is 0, it'll be, the register output will be a 0. Now let me explain this a little bit more as I go, so it doesn't, don't you know, get confused or turn off. It's really easy. Once you get the basics, you'll be wondering why you never got into it before. So we want to following the load here on the right. We want to load into a registry. So we're going to say R1. It doesn't have to be R1. It can be any registry between, I think, 1 and 14. I'm not sure exactly how many registries there are, but you shouldn't be worried about that to begin with anyway. We're loading from the pin, the D. So in this case, it's D0, which comes up green, as you can see, the same color as the what's in the functions. Now, we can do D0 or we can do sensor, which comes up white, same as it is up there. It means the exact same thing with alias sensor as D0 or D0 as sensor, sorry. Now we want the variable. So we want, depending on the device that you're looking at, and we will confirm out of that so we don't lose it. Go into the Stationpedia, pause it. Now we're going to look for the sensor, the gas sensor, and down in the logic here, you can see all the different logic type states that can be read. We are looking for the temperature. So we've got to spell it exactly as it is there, temperature, go into edit, turn off the noise, temperature. Now if you want to know more about the variables in here, device variables under the X function there, we have all the different variables and what they can do, the color, the filtration state, fuel harvest. It depends on what you're using, as I said, and it'll give you a little bit of information in the device variables if you should be wondering what they are from the Stationpedia. So this will load into a registry. We can alias that registry if we want to. We don't have to. We can alias the temp into R1. That just means we could then use the word temp if we wanted to. But let's stick to exactly what's going on for the sake of this tutorial. So now we have a number in R1 that's going to be something like 290, let's say. What are we at right now? We're at 290 and falling. Okay, so we're obviously going towards nighttime now because the temperature is going to go down. So every degree of drop in Celsius is a degree of drop in Kelvin. So we're at 290. Let's say we want to turn on a heater for it instead of a cooler when it gets to 0 degrees. So 290, 280, 273, I think. So we want to SLT, set less than a registry. I'm going to say a temporary registry of R0 in this case. If we go and look at the SLT, I remember what it is, but I want to show everybody else. Set SLT, register equals 1, so we're true or false, Boolean logic, if A is less than B. So the first number has to be less than the second number. So set less than R0 if the R1, if the temperature is less than, what did I say, 273? That's Kelvin. Now you could then alias another registry to be the number there, but let's keep it simple. Set less than R0 if R1 is less than 273. Now we want to save to the device. I will run to the so save to the device, the variable, and then the R number. So we're saving to the cooler on R0 being the result of the process that we did there. So it's less than 273. Okay, turn on the cooler or whatever. And then because we need to keep doing this, it's not something that we do once. We're going to have to jump back to the tag that we gave whatever it was at the top there, and so start or loop or something, whatever suits your fancy. So that's confirmed. So what them few lines of code there are replacing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different logic chips. And I will can I fit this? No, I probably can't fit this into the same network. I will very quickly add it into this network. So okay, so I have to export that code to the housing. If I turn this on, it'll give me an error. Now, because I aliased at the top there, the pins actually give you the name, so we're going to look for gas sensor and cooler. In this case is the flashing light. If I turn that on, it's giving me an error at line 8. Right, that's because it's D1, not D0. I'm turning on the light. I can't turn on the sensor. The sensor doesn't have an on. There we go. This is why it's a really good idea to actually label and use the labels that you've got. Is if I put in save to the light on R0, I wouldn't have had that error. So anyway, eventually... Okay, that's 279. Let's just go 278. It's already 277, so if I then say 275, export, it'll go off until it goes on. There we go. It just went over that threshold. That's how you can set things. Now, if I try and turn that off manually, it'll keep turning back on because the network's refreshing. This one, not so much. It only changes when something changes, if you get my drift. So if I can turn that off, it won't do anything unless it gets updated with a true value. Now, that is using a variable, so using a one device variable to create something on a different device. There's sensor, variable, function, that's saving, and that's the pin D1. So for my next demonstration, we're going to look at logic gates because Boolean logic is very useful. It's basically how I run all my code because I'm still a caveman when it comes to code. So, you know, you're learning the basics from someone who only really gets the basics, I think. Maybe intermediate. So we're using the same logic writer to activate something again. It doesn't have to be a cooler, it can be whatever you're talking about. Now over here we've got the memory still, but instead of a math, we still got the compare unit and we still got the memory unit. But over here, instead of having one input, we're now looking at more than one input. So we've got 1 and 2. These are just connected into the input side of these logic readers, and they're reading, well, this one's actually reading open and this one's reading setting, just to show that they're the same thing, only the open can be read and written. Now, these are actually on, but they're not giving anything. You won't get anything from a device until it's powered, but even though they're powered, they're not actually hooked up on the power end, so just have to wire it in. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Excuse my mistake. I will fix that now like that. Now, when you do hook things up to the network, they do make everything turn off and on, which can be really, really annoying when you're printing things, but look, it is what it is. Okay, so we're now on. When that comes on, we have a setting of 1, and the light comes on. When we have this one turned on, the light comes on. If both of them are on, the light comes on. But if both of them are off, the light goes off. So this is called an OR gate. If one or the other are on, the light will be on. How does that work? Well, this math unit adds these two together. We're only going to get 0, 1, or 2. This compare unit compares that maths unit with this. If the maths unit reads that the input here is greater than the 0, which is the memory, then it'll output 1, which then will be written to the device. Simple enough. So Boolean logic comes in a few different things, and what you just saw there would be expressed in here as something along the lines of load D0 setting load into R1, capital S for setting, load in from D1 the setting, load into R1 from D0 the setting, my bad, load into into R2 D1 the setting, and we're looking at or R1, R2, R0, R1, R2. It'll save into the temporary registry R1, R2, and then save to D3, R0 on. There we go. So usually it's what are you putting it in, what registry are you putting it into, or what device are you turning on is the first thing after the function, and then you get the variable or the thing that you're the two things or three things that you're actually comparing or using the function on. So obviously you'd have loop, jump. J is jump to the loop. Once they go purple, you know you're doing it. That is essentially there in code very quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 lines of very basic code to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different chips, basically. Now, if we have different functions like and is another one. So this one we have to have both of them on. So the math here, we want both of these because 1 and 1 makes 2. We want this to equals 2. So now if 1 comes on, nothing happens. If both comes on, something happens. If 1 goes off, nothing happens. So you can use this to trigger all sorts of things around the base should you want to. So the other one is not and. So basically with this one we want to have less than 2. So hold on, 1, 1 is 2, less than 2. Yeah, that's it. So if one of the if let's say that this is temperature and pressure, you want Harvey to plant things if the temperature and the pressure are fine. So they're both on. If the temperature goes too low, Harvey won't plant. If the pressure goes too low, Harvey won't plant. Otherwise, Harvey will plant. That's a NAND gate. So we've had the OR. Now we have the NOR. So actually, this time the math compare unit has to equal 0. So if one of these is on, the light will go off. As you can see, setting 0, setting 0, 1 goes on, both goes on, light goes off. And again, that is expressed as we have... Okay, apologies for my jump edit there because I have lost a little bit of footage, so I'll just do it again quickly. This is the NOR that we saw, the not OR. So same as OR, but with the not in front of it. So if we go down here, you will see that the registry value that you set at the beginning is 1 if A and B, the other two registers, are both 0. Otherwise, it'll be 0. And you don't have a NAND. We don't have a not and. So what you'd have to do is do an AND. So let's say R0 is 1 if R1 and R2 are 1. But then if we set equal to 0. So if it's equal to 0, R0 will become 1. And if it's not equal to 0, R0 will be 0. So that basically turns the AND into an AND. So I've loaded up a quick program here from my library. Your library is your friend. You can save stuff in here. You can name it what you want. You can give it a description and it'll be there forever. And like I've got a few here for myself. This one is just a greenhouse sensor. Now there's actually 2 different greenhouses, 2 different valves and 2 different sensors. The line it breaks about is about here. But anyway, this is code in action. It's as simple as this. Load into registry 0. Nowadays I usually use a non R0 register for any variable, and then I can reuse it later on if I want to at any point. But we'll stick to this. Load into R0 the temperature, set greater than, so it'll overwrite. If you do this, it'll if R0 is greater than 297, it'll overwrite R0 with 1 or 0. Then you load into R1 the pipe analyzer temperature. That's the cold pipe analyzer for the coolant line. If the pipe analyzer temperature is less than 297 and the original true or false value is true, then we put the cold valve on, because that would mean that the temperature is greater than 297 in the room, less than that in the pipe. We've got the valve connected to make the temperature equalize through radiators. And this is basically the same thing again, using R1 again, checking the temperature in this greenhouse instead of that greenhouse, and if the temperature in the pipe is still cold enough, it'll connect the valve in order to equalize the temperature. It really is that simple. And then obviously a jump back to the start. So that's the basics. Now you can go and you can find my high-speed airlock if you want on the workshop. It is there. I've anything that's got a hash tag before is notes that don't get listened to by or read by the code. This one's a little bit more in-depth. It's got some jumps, some branch greater thans and less thans and all the rest of it. It does a lot more defining and even aliases a couple of registers. You don't need to know how it works, as long as you can pin up a door outer, a door inner, an LED, a sensor, and a mirror. And I don't think you even need to pin up the LED because I put a branch not set, I think. Anyway, doesn't matter. But there's other people's stuff in there as well. There's loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of really great code that you can use for anything. There's a grow light automation here, which is a very simple few lines of code that basically sleeps for a number of seconds. That's all it does. Turns them on, sleeps, turns them off, sleeps again. There's combustion centrifuge controllers if you want to get one of them going. I'm not even gonna try and break that code down myself. There's Amy stuff. There's even stacks here from Mick for the advanced furnace. Again, I'm not gonna try and even figure out what he's trying to do there. Like, I probably could if I really put my mind to it, but I don't need to. Some that you might really need is the fuel mixer by Elmo is a really good fuel mixer. Okay, you need to have three pipe analyzers and a mixer. So for your input, your output, your inputs and your output, you can define your target pressure in the output pipe and the minimum input for the input pipe. And yeah, that's a really good, easy piece of code there. The Amy controller is another one from Mick that you might want. this is really good for setting up AMI. There's FNS solar panel tracking I found to be quite useful. Again, you don't really need to know how these work. Like, you can just load them in to your library, press that button there to load the instructions. If you want to write back, you press this one. So if you actually change something in here and you in your own code, you could overwrite it back by pressing that, and then you'd actually press overwrite. You can also delete them, or you can actually upload them to the workshop. It's up to you if you felt like doing that eventually. My very first upload to the workshop is the airlock, and it's my only one, and it might all be the only one forever, I don't know. Anyway, that's a little bit about that. So before we wrap things up, I want to try and keep this a little bit short if possible. I want to talk about the batch reader, the batch writer, because it's the same on here. You've got SB and LB, which is save batch and load batch, or set batch. I'm not sure the exact terminology, but I just use that as an easy way to remember things. So let's say you want to what are we going to do? Turn on the lights. I actually did set up a thing for this. It's kind of set up purposely for what I'm about to show you. To, here we go. With the batch reader, you're looking for a type of device, so we're looking for the levers. Now you can do a variable which we're going to use setting, I guess. But the method here is what is it reading in batch? So we can have the average. So if 1.5 of these were on, then half of it's done, we batch write. But for example, the sum, well, you can do 1, 2, 3. So if 2 of them are on, or whatever, minimum is any of them off, and maximum is any of them on in this case, or it will add them all together and give you the average, or it'll give you the maximum or the minimum or whatever. The batch writer, we're going to take in the batch reader. We are going to output to the wall light, and we're going to output the on variable. So if we take that, they all go off, except for this one. This one is a different kind of light. It's a long angled light rather than a wall light. This one we're going to read, and we're looking for the minimum. So if any of them are off, nothing will come off. But if all of them are on, the minimum is 1, and then the lights come back on. So conversely, if we do a variable of, a method of maximum, none of them are on, but if one of them is turned on now, they all come on. And you can do that for pretty much any device in the batch write to turn it on or activate or whatever. As I say, there's average will return a number that's not 1 or 0. The writer wants a 1 or 0, so we could do a sum, and then we could do a compare like over there and make something happen if so many were on, whatever. But at the moment, let's just go for a maximum and make sure the lights are on. Cool. So something else you can get with Logic IO is now this one's very handy for anyone, even if you're not doing very much in the way of logic at all. You might still want something like a light switch. The logic writer switch is just the thing you want. So you've got a plug. I believe you don't need to, if you're using it as an output device only, I don't think you need to wire up the input. That would make sense to me. That's an input. Now we want to say that if we're gonna read the light, the angled one, that one, not use too much air, and then we're gonna say on on is the one we're looking for. Now, if we turn that on, that's off, that's on, that's off, that's on. And again, you can do anything. You can activate an arc furnace from inside your base via chutes so that it doesn't off-gas into your base. You can toggle things. You can do anything you want. That variable can be anything. It doesn't have to be on or off. Just a nice handy little logic switch there. So lastly, let's just combine what we've got here. So let's say this batch rider doesn't read them anymore. Let's say it reads the logic rider switch. There we go. Now we're reading, it doesn't matter, the maximum will do, the variable will be activate, I believe, is it? Yep. So now, all of the lights come on and off because of the batch read. The batch write. That could be a logic reader or even a logic mirror. No, it couldn't be a logic mirror because it has to read the variable. It could be a logic reader, it could be a batch, but we've got a batch reader. And if it was, because it's a batch reader, if any of these lights come on anywhere in the base, all of the rest of the lights in the base would come on of that type, if you get my drift. And I can show you that that's a separate light. Like, I haven't done any magic editing or anything because, hold on, no, that's the wrong one. Yeah, let's say flashing light instead, shall we? Right, turn that on, flashing light comes on, turn that off, that light stayed on, all the other lights have come off, just to prove that it's not some kind of trickery going on. And there you have it. I think that's pretty much all I can really give you for a beginner's guide to logic. Now, I really hope that you take it on board that this can be very easy and very powerful once you get your head around the basics. Don't take it for granted that, how much you can accomplish within your base in a small amount of time with a small amount of automation. And don't think it's difficult, because once you've got the basic principles of how to read the functions and how to set things up, you're on your way. You really are on your way. And it's even color-coded to make it that little bit nicer and easier to use. And if you get stuck, then there are people on the forum who would be more than happy to help you. There's people on Reddit that'd be happy to help you. I'm sure there's a Discord server that people would be happy to help you. And as I say, there's plenty of stuff out there on the workshop that you can download into your library straight away. And yeah, like, have fun, play around. It's there to be explored. Anyway, I hope this helped someone, and if it did, please leave a like, and I hope maybe to see you in the next one. So, I will leave it at that, and I'll say slán, or be safe.